All right, everybody. On today's episode, we go deep with an incredible friend of mine and one who challenges every which way, I think. And this episode is loaded with wisdom and nuggets, and I think most powerfully, perspective shifts. And before I even talk about what we covered, one of the best pieces of advice that we talked about at the end of the podcast was one of my earliest mentors said, the best way to learn is to consume information from the opposing view. And I think it's so relevant for today's conversation because Jesse is open and honest and authentic and also has the success and giant heart to back it up. And this episode is loaded with nuggets. We talk about understanding the first line of mental defense and the power of asking yourself, what do you actually see? The power of the wedge, which is between the pause between the stimulus and the response, meditating, journaling, and 3 to 5 things that went well that day. But his actual process for even using meditation as a tool, and he guides us through the 4 phases of his meditation. He shares his prime life meditation. We focus and talk about how we shouldn't be focused on how long we live, but how well we live. His entire story, which is the irony of having a school teacher as a father and yet never going to school, and how that influences how he thinks, how he sees the world, which led to all of his success. How there are freedoms that we want, but we forget to ask ourselves, what responsibility are we going to take on? The absolute power of the baptism of reality and all his insights and knowledge on how it applies to entrepreneurship and business for every single one of us. How we might be accidentally practicing incompetence instead of focusing on what truly moves the needle, which is asking ourselves, is what I'm about to do useful? Because it doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if it's useful or it makes a difference. How most people fall in the trap of having split attention and focus, and then they end up and they were taught to delegate their certainty to others with authority instead of calling it in from the inside, whether it's their wisdom or their connection to source or connection to God. We talk about how Jesse thinks that coaching is a rest stop, truck stop toilet, which I loved and I laughed. How there's a vast difference between theory and results, but how to focus on what actually works and bring in the clients of your dream. How your competence is not what you're compensated for, but it's actually your communication. The delivery of what it is that you offer or sell drives your reputation, but the description of what you do is what drives your revenue. How the most important question you can ask yourself as much as possible is, how can I be more valuable? How can I be more useful? And then his story of his bus ride that Chris Williamson named the Hedonic Reset, on how he took a Greyhound bus back from Toronto to Austin, yet still managed to grow his business, run his business, and the power of taking actions like that. And I think one of the ones that tickled the most is how you cannot outscale your own misery. So we cover all of that and so much more with my dear friend, Jesse Elder. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And today I am joined by one of my bald brothers who I respect heavenly. And I know I have a pink mohawk that looks like Poppy the Troll right now, but give me a week or two and I will be back to being a bald brethren. But I'm even getting choked up doing this intro. The man that we have today is somebody that I admire, I deeply respect, and somebody who I also consider sound counsel in every single bucket or area of life that I could ever be stuck or challenged. And God has a very beautiful way of reminding me of the people in my life, because this man also just has serendipitous timing of no matter where I am, I accidentally bump into him, or I end up in a spot I'm not supposed to be, and we're in the back of the room together, to being on social media. And every time I leave our conversations, I leave our interactions, I am full of love and light and possibility. And most importantly, just feel so safe in his presence. And he is a man who has been in this game for a very, very long time. And we might get into how it started in Cutco or direct sales, or leading to here, or having a ranch and supporting the world and standing for sovereignty and self-awareness and alignment, but also one of the most incredible coaches and entrepreneurs and people that I genuinely know and I'm honored to call a friend. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome my friend Jesse Elder to the show. So Jesse, welcome to the show.
That was a hell of an intro, George. Thank you.
Bro, just my heart, bro. I wish I could script those things, but I just removed the filter between my heart and my mouth and I let
Dude,
it flow.
life is better when it's lived as improv. Strategic
Yeah.
art, action philosophy, and I think we have both a lot more control than we think, and way less need to control than we think. And that was a brilliant example of just going for it.
Yeah, man. And thank you for that. And I think most importantly, before we even kick this off, like just thank you for always seeing me, but always seeing everybody in the world as well. It's one of the things that like I admire and look up to you for. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. And I just like even in this moment, even when we connect before the show, like your presence is just like, and Jesse, here's where I am. And you just have this ability to like help me feel seen and navigate the noise and come down to center and come down to grounded, which is kind of the perfect segue because before the show, I was asking you, where you kind of want to start. And something I don't talk about often and haven't is kind of the state of the world and the influence that it has on us with our attention and with our focus and how to even distill down like what's ours and what's filling us versus what's draining us. And I'm, for lack of better terms for everybody listening, I'm just going to be really blunt with you. I'm ready to be taken to church because I will be taking copious notes of everything Jesse says as well. But your ability to break things down into such a beautiful, self-empowered state with things to do is one of the things I respect and admire. And what you shared with me before the show started tickling my heart before we even hit record. And so I'm just going to kind of throw you the floor and let you unpack like what we're seeing, what's feeling, and kind of empower us all to kind of start taking action and really be the best version of ourselves.
Well, that's a tall order, but I think between both of us, we can make something good happen today. I'll preface what I'm going to get into, and maybe we can start with today with a webinar that I did the Monday after July 13th. And July 13th, 2024, there was a big news event that happened on that Saturday that allegedly involved a bullet, a former president, a bloody ear, and a fist going fight, fight, fight. So I did a webinar on Monday. I announced it that morning, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to do a webinar this afternoon." And basically, it's like, what the heck is going on? And we had almost 400 people register for that off one Facebook post. And I wasn't making any offers. I just wanted to share some perspective. And the reason I'm bringing all this in is because I'm going to ask the same question to everybody watching and listening to this that I asked all these people that were on the webinar. What did you see on July 13th? And that was the question. So people start typing in all these things on Zoom. There's hundreds of people, so the comments are just coming in like crazy. And they're like, I saw a former president, assassination attempt. I saw Secret Service, fumble. I saw. I said, okay. With all that being said, with everything that you saw, let's back up just a little bit, and we all know how sight works, like the physical act of sight in this physical universe. But let's break down what is sight. Your eyes receive light that's bouncing off of a surface that then goes to the back of your cornea and then inverts it, and your brain turns that into an image. So what we're actually seeing is a piece of glass. And then we're seeing pixels move behind that piece of glass with colors and shapes to form images, and then we're hearing sounds, and then our brain is converting those images into meaning. The reality is, nobody saw what happened. We saw a screen that was creating images that had all these things. I said, and that's the first line of mental defense, is to remember and to continually remind yourself that you're not ever seeing what's actually happening. And I'm not suggesting that there's trickery or AI or whatever. I'm also not suggesting there's not. But just bringing it back to the basics of reality, we're only seeing a piece of glass and images that are broadcast, streamed, edited, spliced, whatever. And that's very much how I've learned to navigate through reality, is that I don't know unless I physically was there. And even then, if you've ever been to a good magic show, or you've ever, gotten catfished on a dating site or whatever, it's like, oh shit, that's not what I thought was real. And so most of us get so hooked into the events, the headlines, the news, the stories, all of this stuff, that we become separated from our own felt lived sense of reality. And then you add in this sort of collective consciousness, which right now is in a fear cycle. And it's very easy to get disconnected from your own sense of agency. And so the reason I gave that example at the webinar, and again here for everybody listening, is that in between, and your audience knows this probably better than anybody, in between the stimulus And the response, there's always that pause, like Viktor Frankl said. And that pause is more important now than ever. It used to be useful for not losing your temper when somebody cuts you off. I think it's far more valuable now to increase that gap as much as possible, where when you see something, especially when there's a high level of emotion to it, whether it's greed or fear or anger or sadness, realize that that event, that picture, that headline was posted and shared explicitly for that intent. And there are still, despite the shenanigans of the last 4 years, there are still people that believe that the news is there to inform you. And it's like, God bless you, man. If that's what you believe, go for it, brother. If that's what you want to believe and that makes you feel safe and feel informed, awesome. Can't say I haven't done the same thing myself. But having learned enough about the actual organizations and their real job is to control attention. And it's like, at what point do we want to win back our own attention and give it to things that people act, that give it to directions and people and situations in our personal lives that benefit from our unfractured, heart centered, gut grounded, future focused attention. And that's where we get all of our power back. And there's a very quick way that I share with students and clients to do, and I'm sure you do it, George, and I'm sure your audience and clients do it as well. But there's a combination of meditation and journaling, which is so easily dismissed because, like, I ain't got time for that. Haven't you seen what's happening? I'm like, well, motherfucker, you haven't seen what's happening. You saw a piece of glass, and your nervous system reacted to images, so you don't even know what's happening. So if you just take 20 minutes, put yourself in timeout, put the world on pause. Yeah, if you haven't been practicing that, you get paused for a minute and you start to freak out because there's things you have to take care of. It's like, no, that's an extra sign that you actually probably should be meditating more. And at the end of the day, you just take pen to paper and you write down 3, 4, or 5 things that went well that day. It will calm your nervous system down. Your brain just wants to do a good job for you. So it's like you're telling your brain, hey, good job, brain. You did this and this and this. You feel yourself start to chill. Then you program your subconscious mind while I'm sleeping. I want my infinite subconscious mind, or if you have a supernatural power that you believe in, then say, this is what I'd like you to work on. I'd like clarity on this problem. I would like extra healing for my, left meniscus where I tore it during my 5K, or I would like increased opening of my heart to receive the love that I know my partner has for me that I've been blocking. And those are very eloquent, sort of elaborate requests, but everybody's got their version of it. So 3, 4, 5 things that went great, subconscious mind programming, and then this is so simple and hardly anybody does it, which is incredible. You write down, how do you want to feel when you wake up in the morning? And you just write down and say, when I wake up, I want to feel refreshed. I want to feel rejuvenated. I want to feel attractive. I want to feel horny. I want to feel wealthy. I want to feel like a badass. I want to feel unstoppable. I want to feel like a giver, whatever. You do those 3 things. It's a very specific architecture of attention that you do at the end of the day. People's sleep scores go up. They're spending more time in Delta. They wake up feeling incredible. And people routinely report the automatic resolution, even of big shit that they've been dealing with, because they're actually partnering with this universe instead of fighting it. So welcome to the Mind of George show.
Welcome to the Mind of George show. And I couldn't have asked for a better intro. Like, genuinely, even the synchronicity of this, like, I'm working on an outline for a training for our alliance on how our language equals our perspective equals our perception.
Mm-hmm.
Our perception dictates how we see a problem, and then the awareness of how we see that problem creates the pathways to solve it.
There it is.
The way that you articulated that, and also, by the way, just because you constantly do this to me, and this one I appreciate as well, like, shattered paradigm of, if you're not there in person witnessing it, you're just seeing it through a piece of glass, and our nervous systems are still being basically regulated by these external factors. Well, the illusion of us driving is there. And so I would venture to say, and I think for everybody listening to this show, for me, even when you talk about fractured attention, how often we forget that we're in the driver's seat, and that, our inputs directly create the results in the reality of our life. But whether it's the news or your competitors on social media or that YouTube rabbit hole that you get stuck in or the doom scroll on Instagram, like that attention doesn't have an unlimited gas tank.
Right.
And we deplete it everywhere. And then we take the remnants of it that is left over and try to apply it to us
Mm.
as the byproduct or the end. And we expect kind of those full-time results. And even for you to share what you shared about like just the power of that pause. For those listening, I'm going to have Scott Carney on the podcast, but I've recommended this book 1,000 times, and it's called The Wedge. And it is an entire book dedicated to that gap,
Mm.
the pause between the stimulus and the response, and the muscle of how we train it and condition it to be able to utilize that and really regulate, as you're speaking about, our nervous system and in that situation our perspective. And so one thing, and this is going to sound really really silly, but I, as a guy who used to be anti woo and was like, yeah, whatever, to now like probably as woo woo as I can be and also like a man of faith, and I'm like, God, I'm like almost repulsed by how I used to be, but I appreciate the journey. When you say meditation, how do you define meditation? Because it's still something that comes up for me, but also with a lot of people around me. Like, I'm not just going to go sit still. Like, I can't quiet my mind. Like, what's the point of all this like hoopla? So I would actually love your perspective on like when you say meditation, whether
Sure.
you're sitting for 10, 20 minutes, like how do you see that?
Yeah, and it's something that I was really frustrated by when I first heard about meditation, growing up or, being a teenager, because it sounded so cool. It sounded so useful. Also sounded lazy. It sounded like a cop out. And then I started reading about it and it was so complicated. I was like, I don't fucking want to speak Sanskrit. It's like, I don't want to remember, the 42 breath combinations. And then I got to hold my fingers like this. And I'm just like, no, like that does not interest me. And I never, ever, ever pursue anything unless I'm totally interested in it. And then one day, this is back when I was fighting, I would get so worked up before a fight, and I know that I'm burning nerve energy, and so like I got to figure out a way to like stop the energetic hemorrhaging. So I'd arrive to the venue where I would compete in jiu-jitsu or taekwondo or later in full contact, and I would just put my hoodie over my head, crawl up to the top bleacher, and lay down and just close my eyes and just get still. And my mind is racing. It's filled with like, what if this happens? And what if this, all negative stuff. But I found that after a few minutes of just laying absolutely still, I could feel my brain like let go. It was like a flywheel, and you just stop pushing it. And after a minute, it's just like it just stops. And I began to think that's interesting. If I just pause the muscles in my body, then my brain will race for a minute, but eventually, because the brain is the body, it starts matching the lack of tension in my muscles. And I was like, huh. And then I started to realize other times when I would lay down, but I would get like, like your ear itches. And so you scratch your ear and then you're still. And then it's like, you gotta, you pop your back and then you're still. And then it's like, oh, I got to clear my throat. And then you're still. And 20 minutes wouldn't have the same effect. And I began to realize every time you move, you're resetting the chill clock from zero, because it takes time for your brain in these high beta waves to get down to that alpha state. And years later, I created a meditation formula, a protocol that had 4 distinctly different phases of attention. And dude, it was like a superpower. I began to teach it to people, realized it was what I was doing when I was fighting. I just didn't have a name for it. And so it's first phase, you just chill out and don't move. Let your thoughts do what they're going to do. But after a few minutes, you'll feel that we call it the alpha drop. It's like everything slows down, you get calm as a natural byproduct of not moving a muscle. And that's not always easy, but just don't move. Then, after that alpha drop, that first phase of presence, then you start doing this sort of active appreciation. You think back to other times in your life where you had a victory or a positive experience, or you hugged a loved one, or the birth of your child, or that time you crushed a sales goal, or the time you had just amazing sex or whatever. And you're just replaying all these positive memories. And when you do that from a place of being more present, those memories are much more available and much more active. And what that does, it raises your vibration, very woo term, but everybody knows what it feels like. You're just like, damn, I actually feel good right now. And then you can go to the third phase, which is pre-paving, and you're seeing the future the way that you'd like it to be. And I've come to understand that imagination is actually memory from your future self. So when you see the moment or the performance or the goal that you want to achieve, I think we're actually seeing it through the eyes of the version of us in the future that is actually living it. And it's just a wonderful way to rehearse and build your certainty. And then that fourth phase is just absolute receiving. Like you're going to get ideas, you're going to get insights, you're going to get um, sometimes just powerful feelings. And then that's it. You come out, you feel like you slept 4 hours. It's like having a second day. It's totally free. It literally takes 20 minutes, takes a couple of days to get into it. But I put a free version on Spotify, and anybody can just go and look up Prime Light Meditation, Jesse Elder, and there's about 10 minutes of explanation and then a 20-minute guided thing. And we've had, I don't know how many thousands of people now have done this, and they're like, I used to hate meditation and now I love it. And they're sending screenshots of Insight Timer. It's like, you've had 97 consecutive days of meditation. It's epic, man.
I love it. Yeah, I actually didn't know about that. That's a gift for me because I will use that. But I will also, for everybody listening, I will grab that and I will link it in the show notes so we have that on Spotify for Jesse. Because even me, like right before this podcast, and just to kind of make this my own therapy chair to let everybody know that like none of us are immune to this, I was getting acupuncture with my incredible healer, acupuncture, cupping, everything. And I like crave these appointments because there was just like an hour on a heated table of just like forced stillness. But today was the day where I was having an ayahuasca experience the entire time I was laying there, like every thought, chapter, brain, moment. And then the more I focused on it, the more it kept ruminating and going over and over and over. And it genuinely reminded me, and this is going to sound really silly, of like when I used to be a Marine. And it's like when you're overwhelmed or out of control, shrink your world as small as you can. And then I literally swapped it on the table and I checked my heart rate on my watch. I was laying on this table with needles in me and my healing. My heart rate was like 105.
Mm.
And I'm like, my nervous system was roasted. And I just laid there for a minute, eyes closed, and I just started having gratitude, like genuinely like looking at all the things in my life, like what I have, my relationship, even with my ex-wife, with my son, with my friends, knowing this podcast was coming up today. And like it shifted my entire perspective. And then I don't even realize, but I conked out for like 20, 25
Mm-hmm.
minutes. And then my heart rate was like down at 60. But the one thing that I wanted to say is that I used to think meditation was just me sitting still, but I'm still have the ability to drive. And those prompts that you shared, I absolutely love that structure. And I love the way that you speak about it because even for me, I've shared this on the show before, but before I don't know if I mean, I'm healed. Like I'm great. I'm the happiest I've ever been. But when I used to be just a walking ball of like accidental narcissism and gaslighting from trauma, I had a shaman who wouldn't let me sit with the medicine. And he's like, because you have no purpose for your life and you can't sit still. And he assigned me a stillness practice. And he's like, I just want you to sit for 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes felt like I was going to war again. Like I
Right.
couldn't do it. My nervous system was like, I was having anxiety. I was having panic. It was like my skin was crawling because I always felt like I needed to be doing something and doing something and doing something. And I'll never forget the moment it shifted because he came out and he just sat with me and he sat in front of me, but he's like, just be here. And it was almost like I'd never done it before. And I didn't know in 10, 15 years, like how to have my nervous system actually just be like, just to be settled. I didn't sleep. The PTSD was horrible. And I'll never forget that day because we were out at Rhythmia right by the labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically came and just co-witnessed me. And he just like, hey, just be here, just breathe. It's okay. And I hit like 5 minutes and that drop that you're talking about, like my whole body released. I shook. I had like goosebumps. I took a big deep breath. And then I was like, I'm good. And I'll never forget this because I sat there for like 4 hours. And the only thing I remember is like I never wanted to leave that state again. But I got to actually feel like what it was like. And it's been something that genuinely has probably saved my life. but I also am sharing this because it's also something that without use atrophies, and
Yes.
without intention gets covered back up with the noise and the attention splitting focus
Yep.
and the things that we consume. And so I would love to know, because like what you just shared and what we link for that Spotify primed that prime meditation is so powerful. But for somebody like you who is also an entrepreneur who coaches like some of the best, most successful people in the world, like where do you see the power of like intention and daily practice and like really, really, really owning this? Because, I think even for me, in teaching it, I was talking about this before the show. I fall into Solomon's paradox. Like I teach this, I coach this, but it'll be this new trigger that I haven't thought about that sneaks in. And then 2 hours later, I realize like I'm just slipping down the path. And, you talk about intentionally priming before bed so that you can choose how your state when you wake up. But like, where are you? And like, what's the importance of having like discipline to a daily practice, and like how do you recommend people follow that? Because I can imagine that with a lot of the high performers you coach, entrepreneurs in general, that it tends to be, and I know for me, the first baby that's thrown out with the bathwater when things get hard, right? You're like, oh, things are broken, things are bad, I can't do those things right now because I have to focus on making revenue or getting that next
Right.
client. And I feel like that's the trap. So I would just kind of love your thoughts on that.
You're very right, George. It is a trap. Like the moment that uncertainty kicks in and somebody is seeking outside of themselves to create certainty, they may do it. They'll make the sale, they'll solve the problem in the relationship, but they move that much further away from the actual source of all this clarity, which is your connection from your conscious mind, your subconscious mind being informed by what I believe the creator. That even if somebody doesn't have those beliefs, it's obvious that there's something informing your subconscious mind. And maybe it's just all of your composite life experiences. Maybe it's the intention that you have multiplied by the pain of the threat, focusing your subconscious to give you instructions. I don't fucking care. But what I do know is that there's a great author. His name's Cormac McCarthy. He wrote The Road, No Country for Old Men, Blood Meridian. Very intense writer, very dystopian. Has a very brief writing style. It's hypnotic, and I became fascinated with his writing style because it's very unique. And then I'm always, whenever I fall in love with a mind and what that mind can create, I'm always like, I always want to know, like, what's your process? And sure as shit, I find an interview that he's doing where he's talking about letting the subconscious mind do the thing. And so he basically talks about sitting down in his typewriter and just almost like taking dictation. And that is a power that every human being on the planet has, that has been hijacked, subverted, all but destroyed. And it starts in school, where your attention is not your own, your time is not your own. You can't even go to the bathroom without asking permission. It's even, you actually have more freedoms in prison than you do in a state-run school. And so for a child, which is most people who grow up to become adults who went to that through that school experience, most of them will come out and go, well, I turned out okay. I'm like, did you? Like, do you know your life purpose? Do you love yourself unconditionally? Do you trust yourself literally with your life every day? Do you have a healthy relationship with risk? Do you live in a complete real time meritocracy where you only expect to be rewarded for value you've created, and you know that you are an infinite creator of value, therefore you can be an infinite receiver of wealth? Because that's the natural state of a child who's left to their own devices, who learns to trust themselves by taking on responsibilities, by making mistakes, especially dangerous ones. That's the only way that somebody can truly have self-esteem. I was fortunate enough to have such a childhood that I never went to school, never sat behind a test or desk, never took a test, never had to study something that I wasn't intrinsically interested in. And the more that I've done this work, the more that work is bringing those sort of experiences back to people so they can develop and reconnect with that sense of self-trust. Because when you see the news stories and the fear and all this stuff, your survival instincts kick in. And the truth is, you can prepare yourself for anything if you're coming from a base of self-reliance and a base of self-trust. And then depending on your spiritual beliefs, then you're not really even attached to how long you live. You're just focused on how you live. And it makes you invincible. Like when you're not afraid to die and you're not afraid to live, you won the bonus round. You won the game. You got a body. Congratulations. You've won. Everything, every day after this is bonus. And so this ability to source information from your subconscious, to have practices that allow that natural inspiration to start flowing. Very few coaches and teachers would still be in business if this was a widely known phenomenon, because then you would, have all the people that, like, I joke about it, but I'm waiting for somebody to come out with a course that says how to be your authentic self. And I guarantee you a bunch of jokers would buy it because they want to be told how to be authentic. I'm like, do you not understand the joke here? You cannot learn to be authentic. You can only be authentic or not. That comes from inside of you. And so, fortunately for me, my work does help people to reconnect with their authenticity, but we do it through some very abstract methods. And it's really more of a deprogramming than it is an education in the classical sense. And the outcome every time is people just get happier because you're not supposed to suffer. Suffering is not a prerequisite. Nowhere does it say, except in a lot of old books, that you have to suffer in order to succeed. You can unsubscribe. You can literally unsubscribe from suffering the same way you can unsubscribe from taxes or unsubscribe from authoritarianism I'm probably dehydrated. Authoritarianism. You can unsubscribe from all the shit. Where does it say that that applies to me? That does not apply to me. Well, this is a segue, but well, you're a U.S. citizen. Am I? I am not. I am not a U.S. citizen. That is a corporate federal citizen, 14th Amendment citizen. 14th Amendment was never even ratified. So it's all fiction. It's all supposition. And I didn't sign a contract. I'm a state citizen, born in Texas, proud non-resident alien to the United States of America, but I have no tax obligation. You cannot tax a living man. You can only tax a federal citizen, and I am not that. This is we are so free. It's hilarious. And that's why I get up every day, because I love being free and I love talking about this shit. So thank you for the
Yeah,
opportunity.
and I feel like, and boy, I love you to pieces, but I feel like for that rabbit hole, we're gonna need an entire series to unpack that
A
one.
lot there.
And so and something I love and respect and admire about you and I'm aware of, and I'm like, there will be a day, and I look into this more and more. And there's one thing that you just said too, that it almost reminds me of The Wedge, but also another incredible book by Michael Easter called The Comfort Crisis. And even talking about perspective earlier, I love how you said, like, nowhere does it say suffering. And I think it's just this interesting state of mind and a reframe of like, I want to be stronger and be able to be capable and lift weights. And when I lift weights and I get tired and out of breath, I don't see it as suffering. I see it as a meritocracy where, like, I'm putting in the work to achieve this result.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I'm
pain
putting,
is one thing. Pain is
yes.
inevitable part of life, but self-selected resistance. Like when you go to the gym, like you transformed your body like a fucking boss, man.
Yep.
Like, and there was pain involved there, but it was meaningful pain, which meant
Mm-hmm.
it didn't have suffering. Suffering, my definition of suffering is that it's just wishing that what is wasn't so. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like if you're under the squat rack or you're doing push-ups, or if I'm training jujitsu, or I'm pushing through a teaching marathon or a marketing trance, or I'm writing like fire copy, there's a moment when you're like, this is hard. But in that moment, if you're like, I wish it was easier, you're suffering. Why do I have to do this? That's suffering. It's hard. So what? It's hard. So fucking what? It's hard. And I'm a badass. So let's go. And you get
Yeah.
in there, and then you're not suffering. You're ascribing a personally relevant meaning to the pain that you chose, which means you're living life in fucking boss mode. That's how you
Yep.
become indestructible. And anybody can do it. That's the best part.
Yeah, and it's so, like, there's so many parallels in my brain, even for my own life and the things that I focus on, to where, like, even when you're talking about the conscious and unconscious mind, it's even with your active meditation, tying that together, it's embracing and having sovereignty or agency over what's happening,
Right.
and choosing our perspective, because one of them will reprogram our perspective to see this as opportunity and, like, wow, I'm growing. And, like, I always joke with people, I'm like, yeah, you ever been on like a 5K run, and when you get to like 4K, you're like, why am I doing this? I just want to be done. But you push that
Right.
little bit, and then next time it gets easier, and next time it gets easier, right? Like it's what we focus on, and our unconscious minds drive so much of our behaviors. But yet, and I love this one that was taught to me in personal development like 17 years ago. They're like, you're operating by the stories that you were either taught or caught. And every day, to even your earlier point, you consume the media, you look at somebody's social media, you consume these things. We're catching those beliefs that are going into our unconscious mind. And if we're not actively rewriting them and intentionally bringing them to our awareness, then we're just actually sticking that down deeper in. And I absolutely love that. And I actually feel called to ask you because, and even hearing you speak, I love hearing you speak, like the wisdom, the experience, the all of it. And I didn't forget about it, but I did forget to mention in the intro, the jujitsu, the taekwondo, the combat fighting. Like you've lived just as many lifetimes as me, and it's this constant evolution of reinvention. And it's not accidental that the success that you've had shows up. It's intentional. But like, would you mind, just for context for everybody, kind of sharing with them, because you mentioned like not sitting behind a text and going to a state school and growing up in Texas, to like how you even got to this point? Because I think it would be beautiful, and I've never heard the full unscripted version, and so
Sure.
like selfishly I kind of want to know as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think it would be relevant for some of the strategy or concepts we'll talk about in a minute. Um, the 2 minute version, which won't leave anything out, is that I'm the oldest of five. I was born in Austin, and when I was born, according to my parents, they just made a decision, which was a very brave one, and they said that we think this kid knows what he needs for himself more than we do, so we're going to love him and stay out of his way. And as a result, I never went to school. My dad was a school teacher, ironically. There ended up being three other brothers and a sister, and grew up in San Antonio, South Texas, totally homeschooled, unschooled, self-schooled. Do your chores in the morning, we'll see you at dinner. So riding bikes, playing in creeks, building rope swings, tree forts, reading voraciously, and all self-directed. So it was very freeing and very, very beautiful. My parents had a great strategy where every time I wanted a new freedom, like staying up late because I wanted to watch Saturday Night Live, or I wanted to not just ride around the block, I wanted to ride to McCreeless Mall in South Side San Antonio. The question was always, cool, so that's the freedom you want. What's the responsibility you're going to take on? And I would counter with, well, I'll do the dishes. And then the answer was like, that's already your job, honey. Okay, well, I'll do the laundry. That's also already your job on these days. I'll mow the lawn. Ah, shit, I shouldn't have said that. No problem. You mow the lawn. So we get a little push mower out, mow the lawn, and you can stay up late, watch Saturday Night Live. So I learned very early on the direct correlation between freedom and responsibility. And then when I was 9 years old, I found Taekwondo, fell in love with it, trained voraciously, would take the bus, cross San Antonio, 11, 12, 13 years old, train, come back. And then by the time I was 15, I had my black belt. I was teaching. By the time I was 17, I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I was 19, already thinking about opening a school. I'd competed in hundreds of Taekwondo tournaments. And then I was baptized in reality when I was at this house party with a girl that I liked. And there's a guy mad dogging me across the room. And I'm like, what's that guy's deal? And she's like, oh, that's my boyfriend. And I'm heartbroken. Homes like Napoleon Dynamite level social skills, like just homeschooled, a little dorky, confident in teaching, couldn't talk to girls to save my life. Here's finally a real live girl, and I like her, and she's got a boyfriend. And I'm like, fuck this. So I left. I felt defeated. Guy jumps on me in the driveway, puts me on the ground. First thought in my mind after hundreds of Taekwondo tournaments, he's going to get disqualified. Then I realized there's no referee. This guy's punching my head in, and my combat skills are basically at the level of like a 4-year-old little girl. I'm just like, what is going on? I don't know what to do. Luckily, people pulled us apart. I was able to get a kickoff, hit him in the head. He dropped. I jumped over him, ran to my car. I was adrenalized. I was scared, freaked me out. Felt like my I was going to say my religion. I felt like my martial arts had failed me because I operated for 10 years, 9 to 19 years old, under the illusion that I was training in the right martial art, the best martial art. Why? Because kicks are, instructor after instructor told me this. kicking is better than punching. Your legs are longer, stronger. It's unexpected, blah, blah, blah. I was completely brainwashed. There are advantages, of course, but the idea of going to the fight, going to the ground, not one time did we ever train on that. And the illusion was broken. And I felt like I had let my faith down because I wasn't a good representation of Taekwondo. Around that time, the universe is perfect. One of my mentors in Austin had been training with the Gracies in California. And this is like 90, 91. So it's before UFC came out. And he's like, come to Austin. I got some stuff to show you. So he starts training me in jiu-jitsu. I'm like, what is this gay shit? Like, I don't want to be on the ground. And he's like, just try it. Trust me. And so we're training. He said, you need to compete in a grappling tournament a couple months later. So I did, and I won. And I was scared, but I won. It was a good reference point. So I kept training jiu-jitsu. I became obsessed. And in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And I knew more jiu-jitsu than just about anybody in San Antonio, except a couple of buddies who were also training. Now I'm 20 years old, and the club, I was bouncing at a nightclub and teaching martial arts during the day. The club starts having these fight nights because now UFC has come out, and everybody's like, what is this reality-based fighting? And I was like, man, I have to do this. If I don't do this, and I'm teaching Taekwondo ostensibly so that people can defend themselves, but I don't know how to fight except for tournaments and that one street fight a couple of years ago where I got beat up. Man, if I don't do this, I'm not in integrity because now I'm just passing on the same philosophies. So I signed up to fight and ended up having nine. I won 9 fights. I lost 2 that year. No rules, no time limit, no weight limit, no safety equipment, and like literally just 2 guys get into the ring and fight until somebody gets knocked out, somebody gets their arm broken, they tap out, they quit. And I won 9 of those fights because I had good kicks, good, decent punches, good kicks, and I was good on the ground. And hardly anybody else knew jujitsu. Even those that didn't have my training background. And the thing that came out of that entire experience was, I used the term earlier, baptism in reality, where I got literally smacked in the face by the incompetence that I'd unconsciously been practicing. That when I encountered reality, all that shit fell apart. And so I realized I am no longer, for the rest of my life, I'm never going to care about what's true, capital T. All I'm going to ask is this useful? And that then became the basis for all of my philosophies, all of my approach to life. It's the number one question that I ask when I'm discerning someone, when I'm considering creating something, learning something. Is this useful? I don't care if it's true, because just because something came from a book, no matter how many people think it's right, is it useful? That's all I care about. And that's been, it seems to be working out.
Wow. I love that. I love the baptism of reality. I feel like that's where
You
I
know,
learned my
you've
lessons
been
the
there
most.
many, many, many times.
Yeah. Yeah. And how quickly it collapses the cognitive dissonance
Yep.
that I was so convinced it was one way. And
Yep.
even that, like, in knowing you for so long and even looking and watching from the outside in, like with a little inside access of like the things that you create, and even a lot of success that leads down it, even in my world, right? Like whether it's true or not, the is it useful question is probably one of the best filters. Because even like when I wrote my cookbook and I decided I was going to market it the way I was, my publisher was like, you can't. It goes against our contract. Nobody does this and you can't do it. And I was just like, I had enough belief in myself. And I'm like, no, I genuinely think this will work.
Right.
And then 22-week New York Times bestseller, and he never complained again.
Yep.
And it's like every one of those moments in my life or career isn't because I was like, is this true or not? I was like, I know this is useful. And if I give it that agency and that power and that dedication, like you're speaking to, someone's going to be impacted positively. I'll learn something along the way. And like that is like one of the most powerful reframes, even for me in this moment, of like, is this useful? Like, is this serving the greater good of
Yep.
myself or the people that I'm serving? Not because somebody told me this is how I should market. Somebody told me this is how I should build my business, or
Well,
this is what my webinar should look like.
and to your exact point, people are so generally lacking in self-trust, and they've learned to delegate their certainty to others with authority, the optics of authority are so easy to manufacture. And it's like, with all respect to anybody listening to this, like nobody with a brain sees someone go, I was just featured in Forbes. It goes, wow, that's a great expert. All of us that know what's really going on goes, oh, cool, you just dropped $3,000 to get an article paid for. And now the same thing is showing up on stages, is showing up on podcasts. You can go pay $10,000 or $50,000 or whatever, be on Andy Elliott's podcast, who I'm not a fan of, but I respect what he's done. I'm just not his fan. Everybody knows it's pay to play. So the illusion of authority is easier to manufacture now than ever. And what that leads to is people who don't trust themselves, looking at others who seem to be trustworthy and buying coaching, signing up for programs, doing all this stuff. Nobody, nobody wants a coach. Nobody wants a mentor. Nobody wants a guide. Nobody wants a boot camp, a mastermind, a retreat. Why is it called a retreat? If you want to advance, I never understood that. Then it's like nobody wants that shit. What they want is what they hope will happen as a result of going. And I've used that as a filter since day one of my coaching. My very first client was ended up paying me $4,500 a month because I wasn't going to get into the dance of, oh, I have this complicated framework and concepts and all this, because I knew that that would just be like taekwondo all over again. And I'm not shitting on martial arts. I think martial arts is a beautiful art, but unless it's based in reality, don't fool yourself that you're learning how to fight. You're learning to LARP. You're acting like a fighter. You look tough, act tough, play tough. Nobody gets hurt. Cool. But if you're going to defend your family, dude, you better learn blades. You better be good with small arms, carbines. You better have your posse in place. And you guys got to train like at least every 3 days. And you got to run simulations. Like there's a big difference. So when I started coaching and somebody would say, oh, yeah, I like your content. I'm just really looking for more clarity. At first, I was like, oh, they like me. They really like me. Because I was coming off a divorce. I was heartbroken. I had guilt, all this shit. Oh my God, approval. Oh, you're telling me there's a chance. It was like a Dumb and Dumber moment. But then my training kicked in. I was like, whoa, I'm not going to become one of those guys. And the client said, well, I just like clarity. And I'm like, no, you don't want clarity. What do you want clarity for? Well, I want to know a little more clearly what I want. Oh, well, let's handle that right now. What do you want? Well, I want my business to improve. Improve by how much? Like a dime, a dollar, 10 million? What does that mean? He picked a number. It's like, okay, where are you at right now? Okay, got it. And tell me what's going on. What kind of lifestyle you're living right now with this level of income? And how's that feel? And your kids are going to the school. And is that where you want them to go to school? And your wife drives a minivan. Is that what you want her to drive? And is this your forever family home? Or is this like a stop along the way? And I'm building out this whole thing. He's populating it with the truth. And now we have an anchored in reality that he doesn't want anymore. And then I said, okay, well, what do you want instead? How about this? How about this? How about this? How about this? Now we have the two polarities established. And I'm like, bro, how soon do you want this? And how much longer do you want to keep doing this? Not another day. Cool. Well, what's it costing you to stay there? On and on and on. And I said, here's the plan. And I pitched it. It's $4,500 a month. And he was like, I'm in. That breakdown, I've taught it to hundreds of people now. Every time somebody uses it authentically, their income hockey sticks because they stop selling stupid coaching. Nobody wants coaching. I fucking hate coaching. It's a necessary evil. It's like a rest stop, truck stop toilet that just is gross and you only use it because you have to. That's what coaching is. If we could just snap our fingers and get people the results, that's the business we should be in. Ugh.
Coaching is a rest stop, truck stop.
Toilet.
I love toilet. I
You
had to write
you
that
only
down for
use it
me.
because you have to. If
Yeah,
you
it's
didn't have to use it, you wouldn't use it.
1,000%, 1,000%. Yeah, earlier, and I have an open loop in my brain. When you were about to share your story, you're like, and this will pre-frame some of the like concepts or the thoughts that I have. Do you remember what those were? Because now I'm innately curious and I didn't ask for clarity.
I think there are. Ask the question again, and I got to pee real quick.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I can pause for a sec.
Okay, yeah, pause. I'm gonna go pee, and
Yeah,
then we'll open
pause.
that loop.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience, good sir.
You're so welcome, my friend.
Man, I've been cranking these new supplements and it's just
Yeah.
like drinking tons of water. So earlier I was like, am I dehydrated? I'm like, no, I'm at a gallon, almost a gallon and a half today. So
Yeah, that's a lot of water for 2:30 in the afternoon.
yeah, man. And well,
Um,
early, you know.
yeah, before I start again, right before you shared your story, when you were framing it in, you said, oh, and this will serve as some context for like some concepts and things I'll
Yep.
discuss.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Give me 3. All right, and welcome back from a very well. Turns out Jesse's not dehydrated; he's overly
Overly
hydrated, and
hydrated.
I took that
Not
chance as well.
anymore.
And then just because like I like living in full disclosure, I just have to tell people the amount of times I've been on this podcast and peed in a coffee cup with
Yeah.
nobody knowing, absolutely mind blowing. But I feel like I've out of integrity, so I've never said it. But let me just be blunt: I've definitely peed in a coffee cup
Yes.
at my standing desk while the guest was making eye contact with me and answering
Yeah.
a question, and they had no idea. So just don't ever touch my Americano cups when I'm done with them for the day. If you're ever in the studio with me, I would not recommend it. So
Extra charge.
there's the comedic relief for the day. And right before we took a pee break, we were talking about when you were pre-framing your story that there were like some concept that you'd like to discuss.
Yep.
And this is where, I mean, I just love your brain and all the parts of it. So I kind of just want to give you the floor and let you unravel them.
I appreciate that. The main context behind, especially the fight stories, is the vast difference between theory and results, like what actually works. And especially in the coaching industry, there are so many people that are hurting and confused, and they're in massive transition. And what they're really looking for is certainty. And so anybody with decent communication skills, a level of self confidence, kind of cool backstory, some neat frames, some good linguistic structures, can go and make millions of dollars because people are just looking for certainty. But these are, to my thinking, and I mean this in no disrespectful way, most people are retards. The literal definition of the word means stunted, held back, and that's not their fault. That's a result of having your focus fractured, like institutionally fucking destroyed in a school system that is explicitly designed to retard learning. If you look up John Taylor Gatto's work, the way the school system was designed beginning after the Civil War was to extend childhood as long as possible. And so children grow up, but they grow older, but they never grow up. And that was the explicit intent of the school system. The sharpest minds of the 20th century went to work to create a system that defeats self-interest, creates massive self-doubt, creates artificial competition, otherization, an elite class who gets to academically manage the rest of the dunces. This is the intent of the school system. Kiyosaki was speaking euphemistically when he said it's to make factory workers. It's not, it's to create slaves. And so most people have incredibly low self-esteem, low confidence, do not trust themselves, hyper safety conscious, which is an illusion. Safety can only be created from inside. And so when I say these things that people are looking for certainty, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just that it becomes this incestuous uh, relationship between the buyer and the seller of information, knowledge, and wisdom. But what's the actual result? I trained for 10 years in Taekwondo and loved it. Every second of it, loved it. Because in the back of my mind, I was like, if I had to defend myself, I could. And then the one day came that I had to defend myself and I was helpless. Thank God. I am so appreciative to that dude that jumped on me and baptized me in reality, because then it made me dispel the myths. It made me question reality and made me question the authority of what I'd been learning. And it caused me to find jujitsu. And then that led to, the next thing. So all that context to say, I know you have a lot of people who are listening to this who are leaders, who are teachers, authors, speakers, great coaches like you, who are facilitators. They are architects of experience. They are transformational specialists, and they're really, really good at what they do. My only point here, and I hope it's just a mirrored point for what everybody already believes, nobody wants your shiny shit. They want what they think that will do. And the better we get at knowing what they really want, not what they say they want. If what they say they want is a boot camp, a coaching program, a mastermind, cool. Why? I've seen numbers of clients go from coaches going from doing, 10, 15,000 a month to 80, 100, 120, 200K because they stopped focusing on their stuff and they became as good at describing the scenes that their clients wanted to change and the scenes that they wanted to move into. They became as good at that as they were at their stuff. And this is a core that I teach in my sales programs and marketing programs. Your competence is not what your compensation is based on. Your compensation is based on your communication skills. Competence is how you keep the money you make, but communication is how you make the money. Another way of describing it is that your reputation is what is created by your results. Like how good you are at what you do will make a good reputation. But revenue comes from descriptions. So delivery drives reputation. Description drives revenue. And so when somebody decides to become a student of communication from the basis of reality, not theory and fantasy and certifications and all this other stuff, they become instantly relevant. They become a category of one. And if they are, as you said, living from a place of disclosure and true authenticity, people feel better around them because they know they're being told the truth. And there's so many examples of this. Look at how many people, and I'm not going to name names, but how many people have become enamored of big personal development personalities. This person was a monk, and this person did that, and this person did that. I come to find out, no, you were never a monk. You stopped by a monastery and took a selfie. Maybe, I don't know the story. Or you copy and pasted, now everybody knows what I'm talking about, but you copy and pasted other people's material and passed it off as your own. And people are going, yeah, because they're just hoping they don't get confronted enough to actually change their behavior. And the reason most coaches don't confront is because either they're not living it themselves or they're afraid that they're going to push people away. And I'm just like, bro, like I actively repel people. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you got to be a special, interesting fucking case for me to even be interested in wanting to work with you. And then I look at people's face, and if they're like, oh God, okay, yeah, no. I'm like, good. If that was enough to stop you, the work itself wouldn't be any fun. But if they're like, I'm in, here's why, this and this and this and this, I'm like, all right, maybe we'll talk in a month. I don't know. We'll see. And as a result, I get the best clients, the most
Yeah.
fun, zero fucks given about what people think, but infinite fucks given for this universe that we live in. Like it is the most incredible, like open heart, thick skin, and you can get away with anything together because now you're truly co-creating. Nobody's sensitive. There's no abuse. There's nothing malicious. It's just like Ferris Bueller meets Tyler Durden with a dash of Alan Watts thrown in. And now we're like, now we can live real life, man.
That's a combo right there. And it's something that like from the day, and I don't even remember like when I met you or how I met you for the first time, but that was the thing that I was always attracted to the most was like just, and it's not even, it's your willingness and authenticity to be yourself and to speak your truth. And that's the thing that has always resonated with me. And the thing that makes me feel so deeply safe with you, because I also understand if I'm ever like, Jesse, and you're like, bro, seriously?
Mm-hmm.
And it cuts through everything like a glove instantly because I know like the truth underneath it, but it's the embodiment of it, like the way that you embody it because you believe everything you say, you stand for what you stand for, and you run everything through these filters of like, is it useful? Is this going to actually create a result and not be a shiny object? And like you practice it at like the deepest level. And it's something that like it's, and I don't mean this in any way of like pedestal, but it's admirable. And it's something that I aspire to and understanding that I'm always on a journey of learning and to get better. But it's something that I've witnessed so deeply and so greatly and that I respect so much. And so I also just like, thank you for being the man and always living and breathing this way in every conversation we have and every time we connect. It screams everything that you speak about, but it also has such a powerful impact and leaves such an indelible mark on me. at every interaction, I feel better off because of that interaction, because of how you embodied this. And so like, just gratitude for that, my friend, like genuinely.
Yeah, man. I'm glad it lands that way. It doesn't land that way for everybody. I mean, I've been blocked on social media a lot of times, including by really big names, because I was like, "What the fuck are you guys doing? Like, we're supposed to be here
Yep.
helping people, and you're over here concerned about optics and images. You were all about freedom and liberty and sovereignty right up until March of 2020, and then you're telling everybody to get fucking stuck with a needle and wear triple masks." And I'm like, "What happened to sovereignty? Like, what happened to freedom? I would rather lose all of my audience and be a fucking broke hermit in the woods living off frogs and berries and fishes than sacrifice and whore out my principles. I might as well
Mm-hmm.
kill myself if I'm not going to have principles." And I called out
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of people in 2020 for that. So, all of that to say, if the fact that you're receiving this as an empowering reflection, that says way more about you than it does about me.
Yeah, well, thank you. And just to bring the popcorn out, I will say for everybody listening, number one is you need to connect with Jesse even before we land the plane to the show. So on Instagram, it's Time Piercer, Timepiercer. And then on Facebook, it's Jesse Elder. And I will tell you that some of my favorite moments and some of the things that I learned the most from you are actually watching you respond to comments, like on your social, like when you have your authenticity and you're speaking your truth. It's not even necessarily the response to it, it's how you respond to the response that is so empowering and respectful as well, because everything in there is just about possibility and what if, and the absolute truth is really the only one you see, but are there other ways? And watching you navigate that is genuinely like pure Michael Jackson gift popcorn and the thing for me, but I also learn a lot as well. And so I appreciate that. And also, just to do my own work, I also receive what you said. And I thank you for saying that. I would do this with you all day, but I want to be respectful of both of our times. But I genuinely like, I just so deeply admire and respect your perspective and also your insights and wisdom. And as somebody who is so tied in both to the entrepreneurial community in understanding what's happening in the world and also having the influence and the ability to, take people to toilet seat, truck stop toilets and coach them for these after states, like you're very, very aware of everything that's happening. And I would love it if you could just share, like, for all the entrepreneurs listening to this, for the people like me, for everybody that are in these industries of coaching and service and consultants and running events and selling products, but are in this game of entrepreneurship, like what would you say is like the best focus or things to keep in the front of awareness, or how to operate your day in the times like this? And just like really like a mini TED talk of like what you would say or focus on, or really keep at the forefront of your mind, because I don't see the information or the reality that's being portrayed to us changing for the positive anytime soon, and it's opportunity disguised as an obstacle. And I would just love to hear your wisdom on that.
Yeah, and I think this is a very good way to sort of land the plane here. There's no such thing as good or bad news. It's like the wind is blowing from the left, if it's blowing from the right. If you're in a sailboat and you've got a solid keel, which is your principles, you've got a rudder so you can adjust your direction and you can adjust the sails, and you have a destination. You don't care where the wind comes from. So the wind blows from the left, it blows from the right. Not to make a super political joke, but when the wind blows from the left, it's got like this whiny voice to it, and it's just like very shrill, and grew up in a middle class town. And then when the wind blows from the right, then it's just like very aggressive and intense and da, 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 da. Who cares? Who cares which way the wind is blowing? You adjust your sails. Tactically, how do you do that? I've experienced thriving through what apparently was a big deal. September 11th, 2001, that entire quarter, those couple of months, everybody's freaking out and like, oh my God, and watching out. Our karate schools, we had 3 schools back then, had a record quarter because we knew what we were selling. We weren't selling martial arts, we're selling certainty. We're selling safety. We're selling peace. We're selling family. We're selling connection, community. So we tripled down. We started doing parents' nights out every Friday night for $3. You could drop your kids off. That's just to cover the pizza. They bring their friends. We'll take care of them. That way you and your partner can go and have a great date night. We got the kids. And it's not just babysitting, because this is martial art. These kids are going to learn life skills and confidence and discipline, and they're going to get fit. for $3. And we tripled down on contribution. 2008, stock market or real estate crash meltdown. I told my staff, I said, we are not participating in the recession. And thank God it was an unregulated industry, martial arts, HR was not even a concept. I said, if anybody says the word recession, you're going to get fucking punched in the teeth. And they're like, yes, sir. We had a record year because we just didn't participate. As corny as that sounds, we doubled down on contribution. In 2020, when March hit and all these lockdown shenanigans and COVID theater and all this crap started, I was like, man, this is going to be another record year because people are scared. They're hurting. They're looking for something. And I know that there's no limit to the value that somebody who gives a shit can actually produce. So I started making a daily video online saying whatever I felt like saying. Sometimes it was like macro politics stuff, and sometimes it was historical stuff, and sometimes it was spiritual, but it just grew and, did very well that year because people invest where they feel safest. And I say all that because we're entering probably one of the largest periods of uncertainty that humans have ever seen. Who fucking cares? For the person who seeks certainty outside, yeah, man, buckle up. You're going to have a great time. I'm being sarcastic. It's going to be scary as hell for most people. But if you're grounded in your faith, whatever that is for you, if you're guided and you're committed to serving, and if the number one question every day throughout the day is, how can I be most valuable right now? How can I be most useful? And that's the guiding question. Then the crazier shit gets, the more valuable you become. And that means you got to build yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, be smart, but also be risky. And that leads to another thing. I mean, I can give more strategies on the contribution side, but there's also not just the contribution, there's the contributor. In other words, how anti-fragile are you as an individual? How widely read? How calcified is your comfort zone become? Oh, I have to do my perfect morning routine every morning. I'm going to sun my perineum for 32 seconds, and then I'm going to stick some charged crystal up my butt, and then I'm going to go drink coffee, and then I'm going to do an enema with the coffee. Why? Why not fucking have a cigarette and a glass of wine at 10 o'clock in the morning just because you can? Like, I'm not recommending that, nor saying it's not a bad idea. But why not? Like, what would stop you from doing that? And when somebody begins to live more of a why not sort of life, they become more in touch with that childlike spirit of adventure that all of us are born with. Most of it got completely handicapped and completely institutionalized, institutionally retarded, but you can recover from that. You can recover from being a retard. You can build yourself back. You can remember what it's like to have that childlike sense of freedom and fun and like playing hooky and like, let's just go do what I feel like doing. When I spoke at Giovanni's event Giovanni Marsico's event in Toronto on Saturday, and I found myself not even taking my own advice. I was like, oh, I got to get back to Austin. It's like, why the fuck do I have to get back to Austin? I don't have a Sigma University event for our men's group until Thursday night. What's the rush? So I booked a Greyhound bus ticket and took a 46-hour bus trip from Toronto to Austin. I had the time of my life. Like the sights, the smells on a Greyhound bus. But after 30 hours, I fit right in. So it was like perfect camouflage.
Yep.
But dude, I read a Michael Crichton novel I've been putting off. I wrote tons of lyrics and poems for some music I'm writing. I coached actively during the entire thing, kept all my calls on a Greyhound bus, and made money while I was on this Greyhound bus, had very interesting conversations with people that I would never have met otherwise. And I in my mind, I'm like, this is like a luxury fast. But I knew there was a better term. A couple of nights later, I was walking around downtown Austin and I ran into Chris Williamson. I was like, what's up? And we started talking. And I told him what I did. And he's like, oh, you mean a hedonic reset? I'm like, yes, Chris Williamson, hedonic reset. That's what I meant. You got to do interesting shit. It makes you a better coach, a better teacher, a better leader, a better partner, a better parent. It makes you a better human because work cannot support the full capacity of the human spirit. That's the late stage capitalist lie. But you can't outscale your own fucking misery because you're not doing the things that you want to do regardless of the financial reward. So 2 takeaways: live a more interesting life without regard for the outcome, and contribute like your life depends on it because it actually does.
Bro, that was the best TED Talk I've ever heard. mixed with lessons, and the Greyhound bus has to be like the absolute best analogy. And just dirty little secret, when I put Branson to bed, I allow myself some of my couch time and I watch the videos of people going on those like cross country train rides or
Yep.
the bus rides, and I'm like adding it to my bucket list of like that hedonic reset. Of course, Chris would name it the hedonic
Yep.
reset. I liked the luxury detox or whatever it
Yep.
was, but I'm not philosopher yet.
I want to show you something because I can totally see you doing this, man. A buddy of mine sent this to me. This is apparently America's most scenic route. It's LA to Seattle.
Yeah.
Dude, oh, hold on. Apparently they have a hardcore alarm. Listen to this evil thing.
Oh yeah, that one's a good
You
pattern
have to
interrupt.
do math to shut the alarm off. Like
Oh, well,
it makes sure you're awake.
oh, that's a good alarm right
Dude, it's
there.
hardcore.
What alarm is that? That's a little bonus
Dude,
tip.
it's insane. It's called uh, Alarmy. What a gay name. Alarmy.
Alarmy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a big alarmy with a Y. Okay, yeah, alarm and a Y.
Yeah.
I love that.
Anyway,
I love
what I
that.
was going to say is this I can totally see you doing this, dude. Like this. Look at this. So like that.
Yeah, the observation cars. Oh, dude, that's
But then
incredible.
check this out. Look at this one. You can. It's a private car, bro.
Wow.
So just imagine the off the rails mastermind.
The off the private train experience
Private train
mastermind.
experience, LA to Seattle, and you just charge like $15,000, pays for the train, and then you bring in the most badass nomadic adventure people, have a photographer. Dude, that's a done deal.
And the one that I found, which is so nuts, is from basically Vancouver all
Hmm.
the way to Toronto. And the VIP ones with the bed, like with your own room, shower, everything, where you like full hot shower, everything, is like $5,300, and it's like 5.5 days, and you get to go through all the mountains of Canada, through all the towns, all the
Dude,
stops. Like, and I say this publicly, but like as somebody who lives on the Canadian border and who goes to Toronto a lot, we've got gypped on the downside of the deal, both with Glacier National Park and
yep,
Banff and also Niagara Falls. So like
yep,
I genuinely want to see it in the Canada side, and I'm like the hedonic reset of like 5 days in a train and like stillness and presence and like being in the beauty of nature is going on my bucket list. And so I love that because you just called up my dirty little YouTube secret that I watch with my son. And I'm like, yeah, we're learning about adventure and like we're learning what you can do possibly. I'm like, this is way better than games and all
yep,
those other things. So
yep.
like that one
Next
landed.
next step is book the ticket.
Next step is book the ticket. There's the Jesse I know and love. There's the Jesse I know and love. Well, brother, um, I'm gonna actually have to re-listen to this one because I took pages of notes and it genuinely spoke to my soul, and I feel invigorated and alive. And I just appreciate you taking the time and gifting all of us with this time. Your time is valuable and your wisdom is unmatched in my opinion, and it's something that I'm just super grateful for. And so, for everybody listening, whether Jesse tickled you or not, I always love, and one of the best pieces of advice one of my earliest mentors ever gave me, he said, I don't consume things I agree with. I intentionally consume things I disagree with to expand my perspective. And I think it was one of the most powerful pieces of advice because it's opened me up into belief of like, why not? And what if there is another way? Because I'm limited to my current life and to my current perspective. And there's a whole lot of life ahead of me and a whole lot of things to learn.
Yep.
And so, no matter where you are, I just challenge you to take a dip, like
Yes.
at least put your toes in and connect with Jesse. On Instagram, he's Time Piercer. And on Facebook, he's Jesse Elder, which is my favorite platform to consume Jesse on and read his posts and engage with his comments and confess my love to him in the comments occasionally. And I just thank you, man. Like, thank you for the gift of being here. And for everybody listening, I genuinely, and I say this a lot, but whatever landed, whatever tickled, let it be the invitation to take action on it now and don't move it again. Right. Tomorrow's a gift from God that's not promised. And today is the time that it showed up. And so today's the day to take that step in whatever small direction it is. But anything that resonated, anything that landed. And the one thing I will share is I know Jesse well, and I promise you that he would love hearing from you. Anything that resonated, any question you have. So just connect, send him a DM with some gratitude, with a takeaway, let him know what landed, challenge him on any of it. I'm sure he'd love that dance as well. And so let's just give the gift of connection and community back. And so, brother, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, George. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you,
Thank
everybody
you, my
listening.
friend.
More to come.
So, for everybody listening, he's wearing a sweatshirt that says cult leader, and I will forever be one of his cult members. And so I'm in this bucket. And so no matter what you do, we will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out. Have a beautiful day. God bless. Oh, brother, that was a blast. Thank you.
That was a good one, man. Great space. Really, really
Yeah.
good dance, good mix of structure and improv, and
Yeah.
couldn't have gone better.
Oh, dude, I could do this with you all day. I'm gonna add that into my intentional radar of like one of those moments
I love it.
as I integrate so many of the things that you shared. And thanks for the reminder and a few pieces of clarity as well.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, man.
Yeah. Is there anything I can do to support you, my friend?
Just be you, dude. Just keep putting good shit out in the world, man. The people need this balance that you bring, like the balance between heart and also, I mean, how many people are as emotionally fluent and intelligent as you who also uh, have Marines training? You know, it's like a
Yeah.
very unique thing, and I think that's one thing that we share is just the ability
Yeah.
to play at both ends of the spectrum without demonizing either one. So just
Yeah,
keep
that's
being you.
that's something I see in you as well. And it's something that I just ran a retreat with my girl in Toronto last week, and we called it the Soulful Scaling Retreat. And of course it's 15 women. And the number one feedback is like, you're so good at just being in your feminine when needed, but holding structure and challenging when there. And it's really been the growth of this divorce and navigating that's allowed me to like integrate those and truthfully, and I'm maybe a little emotional, but even listening to you talk.
I love it, man. It's like character rehab. It was never it was never questioned to begin with, but it got questioned. And then, yeah, I get it, man. Well, more to come. And let's keep the dialogue open on my our